tal, amigos? Buenos días. Estamos listos, conectados en una conferencia más de parte del Consejo Mexicano de la Industria de Reuniones, COMIR. Los saludo, Rafael Hernández, secretario de esta organización. Como saben, COMIR agrupa a todas las asociaciones profesionales de la industria de reuniones, tanto en sus capítulos nacionales como los internacionales. Y bueno, pues qué gusto tenerlos hoy. Seguimos, bueno, estamos en esta semana de mayo. En el mes de mayo seguimos con la cuarentena, pero quizás ya reforzando mucho y viendo quizás el final para poder empezar en junio más movimiento. Y pues hoy tendremos también una gran conferencia, creo que es algo que va a estar interesantísimo para nuestra industria, cómo evolucionar de eventos presenciales a virtuales, con un gran conferencista, con James Taylor. Y pues para mí queda más que nada recordarles temas importantes. Uno, esta presentación estará en su repetición a las 6 de la tarde. Recuerden, apúntenlo. Va a estar en su repetición para que no dejen de agendarla, aunque tengan ahorita la oportunidad de estar aquí, la vamos a tener. Y también la presentación va a estar en la página. Y por el otro lado, pues obviamente queremos comentarles que como la presentación será en inglés, tenemos todo el tema y el apoyo de Amtrak, la interpretación simultánea. Lo único que tienen que hacer es, ya saben, marcar estos teléfonos que estamos compartiendo con ustedes. Ahí viene un ID y con esto ustedes van a poder disfrutar de esta gran conferencia, de este gran contenido con la traducción simultánea. Pues muchas gracias, bienvenidos a todos y me queda por último presentar a nuestro aliado y patrocinador con estas grandes conferencias y grandes contenidos. Nos acompaña Francisco Rodríguez Aguirre, presidente de Smart Speakers, para que también nos dé la bienvenida y nos pueda ya presentar a nuestro conferencista del día de hoy. Pancho, muchísimas gracias. Adelante.
Muchas gracias, Rafa. Y pues un saludo y un agradecimiento a ti, a Jaime Salazar y al COMIR por tener esta importante alianza para los webinars. Y bueno, pues yo también quiero darle la bienvenida a todos nuestros clientes y amigos de Smart Speakers, el buró de conferencistas más importante de Latinoamérica. Y me gustaría comentarles, recalcarles, ya comentabas algo, Rafa, pero las láminas de la presentación van a estar en nuestra página web. Y las preguntas las podrán hacer en la sección de Zoom. Hay una barra que está hasta abajo en donde dice preguntas y respuestas, para que por favor ahí anoten todas sus preguntas y al final tanto Rafa como su servidor estaremos moderando la sección de preguntas y respuestas. Me gustaría también comentarles que todos los conferencistas de Smart Speakers ya están disponibles para dar conferencias en línea. Y me gustaría darles algunos breves ejemplos, como qué tal un viernes social en donde invitemos a nuestros clientes que quieran a un cómico o algo de entretenimiento, o qué tal un analista económico o político que ayude a entender más la situación que estamos viviendo, o un motivador que ayude a elevar la moral de nuestros trabajadores o de su equipo de trabajo, o un especialista en liderazgo en tiempos de crisis o en innovación para que ayude a reinventarnos. Bueno, pues ya sin más comentarios, les voy a presentar a nuestro plato fuerte del día de hoy. Él es James Taylor. Él es un experto en eventos virtuales y en temas de innovación e inteligencia artificial. Él es asesor estratégico de la Asociación Internacional de Burós de Conferencistas. Ha ofrecido contenido en línea en más de 120 países con casi 1 millón de asistentes a sus cursos en línea. Y bueno, y me gustaría ya dejárselos aquí, pues nos vamos hasta Londres con James Taylor.
Hello, Francisco. Francisco, lovely to be with you today.
Thank you. It's great to see you once more.
And it's an absolute joy being with all of you today. I'm here today in Scotland, in the United Kingdom, so on the other side of the pond from you. So thanks everyone for spending some time with us today. We're going to have a lot of fun together. Hopefully this is going to be very educational, but we're also going to share some of the brilliant knowledge. We have nearly 1,000 people just now coming onto this little training today. So we're going to get lots of your questions. We're going to make plenty of time available for questions at the end. So Francisco, are we ready to go? Shall we go with it?
Yes, please.
Let's go with this. So what I'm going to do just now is I'm going to share my screen with everyone just now. We're going to get straight into it. So what we're going to be talking about today is how to evolve from on-site, in-person events to virtual events in a low stress way. Now, there's obviously lots of different ways that you can do virtual events and online virtual events, but I've been doing online events now for nearly 10 years. And in that process, I've learned some things about how to do them and how to avoid some certain things as well. So the method I'm going to teach you today is going to teach you how to take your next conference, your next event, your next big meeting, take it online or do it hybrid and do it in a more stress-free type of way. My goal really for today is twofold. Firstly, I want to demystify the process of what it means to take an event online. We're going to look at the 8 different types of online events. But secondly, I actually want to give you some very tactical things that you can take away after this hour that we're going to spend together. And we're going to have a little resource guide available for you as well, with some exactly what to get in terms of equipment and some of those very tactical elements. So we're going to look at strategy and we're also going to look at the tactics. And if you stay until the end, I have a surprise. I have a little present for you, a little gift for you. So make sure you stay around until the end. Now, as Francisco and Rafa was saying, my name is James Taylor. I'm a keynote speaker on creativity, innovation, and artificial intelligence. Normally, I'm traveling around the world on planes, speaking to audiences in lots of different countries. For example, last year, 2019, I spoke in 26 countries. I did about 60 keynotes in different parts of Latin America as well. I spoke in Ecuador, in Bogota, in Colombia, in Brazil as well. Now this year, like all of us, we're all kind of stuck at home. We're all where we are just now. But what I'm finding is many of the companies I work for, I speak for, so these are companies like McDonald's, IBM, Visa, as well as kind of smaller associations and private companies, are now having to make this decision. Maybe they thought they could push their event, their live event, until the end of the year, but now they've realized it's still not going to be possible. There's going to be challenges. So of the organizations that I speak to, about 60% of them are already planning some type of virtual event within the next 3 to 6 months. And that might be you. Maybe you have an online, you have an in-person event coming up, and now suddenly you're going to have to take that online. So you're going to get a lot of value from today's presentation. Now, there's a number of reasons why we would decide to take an in-person event and take it virtual, or take it online. The first one, the elephant in the room, is COVID-19, coronavirus. It means that we can't travel, or many of us can't travel just now. And even when things start to unlock and we can start to travel again, it may make it very difficult for you to bring in your attendees and your speakers to come to a particular place. People may be able to travel, but psychologically, they may not want to travel. They may feel safer to dial in, come in from home, and watch the presentation and watch the online conference from their home. The second reason was actually the reason that I got into doing online events many years ago, and that was the environmental side. You know, if you think about it, doing events, they're very carbon intensive. And I think as we start to have more millennials come into the workforce, you know, the younger generations come in, all of us are really trying to think about ways to be much more efficient with our time, to reduce our carbon imprint, to do things in a slightly smarter way. And that is one of the benefits to doing online events. Then we have the time aspect. Now, you know what it's like. If you have to go and travel to a conference, there's the time to prepare to travel there. There's the time to get on the plane, to wait at the airport, to then find when you get to the airport to go to that place, all of that time. If you multiply that by, say, 500 executives that are going to an event, that's a huge amount of time that could perhaps be used in a different way. So there's time savings. Also, there's still the need, though, for us to bring people together to inspire, to educate, and entertain them. Those things really aren't going away. Just the modality has changed. And finally, as we know, live events, they suck up a lot of time and they suck up a lot of money as well. Now, as I'm speaking to you just now, I'm going to assume that there's different audiences I'm going to be speaking to. One, if you're an event professional, maybe you have a meetings company, you organize conferences and events, you're going to get a huge amount from this. But perhaps you're internal in an organization and you have an event coming up that you're going to have to do it virtually, and you're going to get so much from this presentation as well. So regardless of whether you're an event professional, planner, or whether you're on the company side or the association side, I think you're really going to enjoy this presentation. There's a couple of other key benefits to doing virtual events. The biggest one, you could argue, is the lower cost per attendee or participant. You know, you'll normally estimate a certain amount per participant for an in-person event. Obviously, when you do a virtual event, that cost is going to be substantially lower. There's much more flexibility. If you do an event where, let's say, you are able to attend, no problem, it's virtual. But likewise, you can suddenly do an event which would normally be 500 people, and you can very easily scale it up to 5,000 people, 20,000, 50,000. I'm going to show you some examples of how that works. An important distinction as well between offline and online events is it's much quicker to spin up, to take an idea from an event in an online world to make that happen. Normally, if you're running let's say if you're doing a conference, your lead time is going to be anywhere from 6 to 10, maybe 12 months of doing an in-person event, because there's a lot of things you need to think about. When you do a virtual event, however, you can spin up some of these events in as little as 30 days. Some of the events I'm going to show you just now went from not being considered at all to suddenly happening in 10 days. If you look at the Salesforce conference, which is one of the big conferences, technology conferences in America, they took that event from making a decision, we have to do this virtually, we have to do this online, and they made that happen within 10 days. So you can do this much quicker. They're very accessible. Anyone can access them. They're what we call evergreen, which means they're always available. And if you're working, let's say, for an association, or you're doing association events, how cool would it be to, rather than put all the effort into an event which only happens 3 days in the year, and you have to channel and do all your promotion for those 3 days, what about if you were able to create an event where people can register for that event 365 days a year, and it feels like that event is happening live. They're going through it in a very kind of natural way. I'll show you some examples of that. Lower fixed costs when you're doing virtual events. You can really control the confidentiality with tools like Zoom. You can set servers and security levels depending on the types of events that you're doing. They're innovative, and they're just global by nature. Today on this presentation, I'm joining you from the United Kingdom. We have live translation, which is in Spanish. If we wanted to, we could have live translation in 20 other languages. So they're much easier to do some of these things in a virtual context. When we're talking about online events, what are we talking about? I would suggest that we can think about online events about being 8 different types of online events. So you have hybrid events, which are in-person conferences or in-person events, which also have an online component. Perhaps they're being streamed live, for example, or there's a virtual pass component to it. You have online conferences, so these are 100% online only events. We have virtual trade shows, virtual meetings, company meetings, continuing education or online learning, webinars, which is kind of what we're on just now, and product launches. For the case of this presentation, I'm just going to focus on a few of these. I'm going to focus on hybrid events, online conferences, virtual meetings, company meetings, and webinars. Because of all the clients I work with, these are the ones that I'm seeing them do the most when it comes to virtual. So that's why I'm going this way. Now, as I mentioned, I've been doing online events for 10 years now. So I'll give you some examples of some of the online events that we do. In addition to me being brought in to keynote at online events, my team, my company also produces online events. So if you're an event professional watching this just now, I've been exactly where you are and having to take that event online. Let me give you an example of one of those. This is one of our online summits that we do. It's called International Speakers Summit. And for this summit, we had 125 sessions. 125 sessions. That's a big summit. It was an online summit that ran over 10 days. When this summit, we created this summit in less than 90 days, and over 22,000 attendees attended this online summit. So you can see you can very quickly turn around an online conference or an online summit, and you can scale it to levels that were maybe bigger than you previously thought. Another one that we did recently was called Event Professional Summit. That was a slightly smaller summit. That was myself, the world top event professionals, conference organizers, the people that can book the big conferences for the Ubers and the TED conferences, for example. Now, this is an interesting element of this, because if you go to eventprofessionalssummit.com today, it looks like this event is going to start in 2 days' time. The truth is, we actually created this event about 1.5 years ago, but we then evergreened it, so we made it always available, which means that anyone at any point can go to eventprofessionalsummit.com, register for a pass for that event, and it feels exactly like it would if it was a live event. So it says it starts in 2 days' time. It's got a countdown timer. They register. In 2 days later, they get the things begin. They get access to all the various sessions. It feels like it's a live event, but it was actually created nearly 2 years ago. So this gives you huge potential if you or your client has to do events which are about client facing, about ways to generate leads, to generate inquiries for their products or services. Now, in that time, done a lot of things right in doing online events, hosting online events, producing them, presenting on them, but we've also done a lot of things wrong. And I had to discover all this stuff the hard way. So today, you're going to get an easier way to be able to do this. You're going to get to cheat, and I'm going to give you a simpler way of doing this, and a simpler overview. So this is the hard way of doing virtual events. The hard way is, first of all, you experience what we call paralysis by analysis. So you're so worried about the technology and the platforms and all those kind of things, so you end up not doing anything. Secondly, when you get over that step, you struggle with working with offline speakers or suppliers. You see, there are thousands of speakers, tens of thousands of speakers out there, but there's a much smaller subset of speakers that can do virtual presentations like I'm doing today, that have lots of equipment, are able to deliver these types of presentations. So you really have to select well when thinking about the types of suppliers, types of bureaus, types of speakers that you're working with if you're going to do virtual. And then finally, when you get through all of that, you probably spent too much time and too much money. So let's avoid all of that. Let's do it a smarter way. There's 3 secrets that I've learned about running virtual events. The first is what we call same, but different. I'll describe what that means in a minute. Secondly, don't sweat the tech. And I'm going to take you through the technology that you can use to do your next event. And then the third one is choosing the right format for your event. So let's talk about the first secret. This is the first thing I discovered in doing online events. Same, but different. One of my clients is McDonald's, and they recently brought me to Thailand in Asia to give a keynote and a one-day workshop for all their franchise owners, all their suppliers, all their top kind of customers. And in Thailand, they have this phrase, which is same, but different. Same, but different. And essentially means it's kind of the same, but it's kind of different. And when it comes to online events, they're same, but different to in-person events. So if you have experience in doing in-person live events, that experience will serve you very well on doing online, but there are some differences. So let's have a look at a typical virtual event, what we call the 5 stages. So we have these 5 stages of doing virtual events. We have what's called the ideation stage, where you're coming up with the idea for the event. We have the build stage, which is kind of building out the event, the online event. We have the launch stage, the promotion period. we have the learn stage, and then finally we have the evergreen stage. Sometimes you won't necessarily have to do this evergreen stage. Now, if we have a look at just the ideation stage as an example, the questions that you will be asking, let's say if you're sitting down with a client to talk about their virtual event that they want to do, is almost exactly the same as if you were doing a live regular event. So you're always going to be asking the client, why are you doing the event? What's the objectives? Is it about is it sales orientated? Is it about generating leads? Is it about building the brand? Is it about selling tickets? What's the objectives for this event? Then what is your event theme? There's another common question that you would ask. What is the hook? Is there a particular angle on that theme that you want to take for this year? Who are the stakeholders? Who needs to be involved in the whole process and decision making? When's it going to happen? When's the promotion period? The nice thing about virtual events is it's a much shorter promotion period. You can start promoting your event with only 3 weeks notice, whereas traditional events, you probably need maybe 3 to 6 months, for example. And then what is the format? This is one that's different, same, but different. So you're asking the client, or you're thinking about this yourself, if you are the client, what kind of event do we want to do? Is it going to be a hybrid event? Is it going to be a 100% online conference? How many days is it going to run for? Is it going to be a webinar series or a speaker series? Then who is the audience? What are the goals, registrations, net promoter score? And then finally, what's the budget? The budget will generally be much smaller for virtual events than live events. So something on that kind of same, but different is, I don't know if you remember this. This was on the BBC News about a year ago. It was someone being interviewed for this TV show. And suddenly his kids walked in behind him and it created this like viral meme. Everyone started seeing this video. But it's an interesting thing because you've probably been in this situation yourself. You're giving maybe a presentation, or you're doing a Zoom call and the phone rings or the doorbell rings or the internet goes down, or someone walks in behind you, your kids walk in. Very common. But when it comes to doing virtual events, something that you have the potential to be able to do, which you can't really do with live events, is you can pre-record. So for example, the last presentation I gave, which was an in-person event, was in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh. And I was the opening keynote speaker. It was for a soft drinks company. They also had the CEO, the CFO, and they had 2 of their top suppliers who were also presenting. And it was about 100 people in the room. Now, frankly, with the exception of myself, the CEO and the CFO, all the other presentations could have been pre-recorded. So in thinking about your event, think about this. If you're doing, let's say, 10 sessions, 10 different presentations, can you pre-record some of them? That can take the stress out of things for you. And then you might have the opening session and the closing session live. And you can even have, obviously, live Q&A. Secret number 2 that we discovered was don't sweat the tech. The technology is so much easier today than it was even 2 years ago. So when I go and give presentations, or when I advise companies who are doing types of online events, I'll normally suggest, when it comes to technology, in terms of the presenting side, whether it's the CEO that has to present, or an external speaker, or an internal speaker, or a moderator, or a host, there's 3 types of studio setups that you would possibly want to have. Now, don't worry, you don't have to take screenshots of all this, because when you contact the Smart Speakers team after this, you can just request. I've actually put together an entire resource guide that you can get, where it has all the information, all the links for all of these things. But the first setup, which is the most common setup, is what we call the office setup. This is the classic setup where, let's say, you or one of your employees or your external speaker is giving a presentation. They're usually sitting down. They might have, their picture in front of them, their camera in front of them. They might have a little light next to them, and they might have a simple backdrop or a bookcase, for example. I put some examples here. These are some friends of mine who are speakers. Jack Canfield, who's one of the great speakers. He wrote a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And they all have, the bookcases behind them. And that's pretty standard. So that is the most basic setup you can get if you have to present, or you have employees that have to present for presentations. Because really all you need to do this is a computer, Zoom, if you're going to use Zoom as your platform, a webcam, a beauty light or a beauty ring. I'll show you what that looks like. That's like one of these things here, and that just allows you to throw some additional light onto your face to change the color temperature. Just gives a much nicer look. Makeup, guys, I'm going to say this to you as well. If you're doing things where you're using a lot of light, just get a little bit of powder, so you don't look all sweaty and hot under the cameras. A good external microphone. I've got one here just sitting in front of me just now. Some earbuds so you don't get the feedback coming from the screen, and a simple backdrop. It could be a plain gray backdrop like the one I've got behind me here. That's it. That's as complicated as it needs to be. You could get all of that for, you know, $250 to $300, really. But if you want to go to the next stage, and if you're bringing in a professional speaker like myself, for example, we'll have a slightly more fuller setup. So in my case, I use what's called a boardroom setup, like the one I'm using just now a lot. And that is where you'll have often a screen. So I can present on the screen, and it can also be on larger for the audience as well. And you also will notice that I have some additional lights. So for example, I have 2 cameras here. So if I wanted, I could switch between different camera angles. Now, the reason that you do that is if you're doing a presentation, which is often longer than 45 minutes or so, to give the audience a little bit of change, it's quite intense if it's just one camera the whole time. Now, to do this, it requires that you invest in things like these. These are called switches. If you've ever done a live event, and if you look at the AV team at the back of the room, and they will have they'll be switching between different images on different screens on the big projectors, and they'll use a larger version of one of these. But today you can buy one of these, and they're very easy, and I can basically just switch between different camera angles as well. Or I could switch between my slides. I could have me in the main shot, and I can have my presentation in what's called picture-in-picture as well. Something else that you're going to probably start to do if you do more of that is, as you notice, I'm standing just now. I like to present standing up. Not everyone does. It allows me to communicate better. It allows me to express things better. If I can use my hands, I can use my arms. Now, in order to do that, I need to have things like an in-ear system, which I've got just now, which is wireless. I can have a wireless lavalier mic, a lapel mic, and I've also got bigger lights. This is actually a picture of my studio here just now, and you can see my studio setup. In addition to that as well, I've got backup internet connections, and we have some other kind of fancy kind of things as well. Now, once again, if you're just doing this for the first time, you're doing your first online event, online conference, and it's just internal employees that are having to present, then they don't need something as fancy as this. But if you're bringing in an external speaker, then you do want them to have something a little bit nicer than this, because it's going to look better in terms of production quality. The final setup is what we call the white screen. Now, where you tend to use the white screen is if you're having to give more training style presentations, kind of workshop style presentations. The nice thing about using the white screen setup, and you probably can't see here, but I actually have 3 different backgrounds behind me here. So I have a gray, I have a white, and I have a green screen. So I can pull that green screen up, and if I want, let's say if I'm presenting in Bogota and I can't, and if I'm presenting there virtually, I could put the backdrop of Bogota behind me, or the backdrop of some other city. The other day I was presenting for a client in Athens in Greece, and so I put the Acropolis behind me. Now, to do that style of setup, it requires really that you have what we call a green screen or a chroma key, and you can do a lot more things with that type of setup. Also, if you're doing more workshop style, you would use things like whiteboards and flip charts as well, and actually have those behind me. Because sometimes you don't want to just be presenting like this, sometimes you want to do much more interactive style. And then the final secret that I discovered from doing all these online events was choose the right format for your event. So I'm going to talk to you specifically now about if you're looking to bring in external speakers to do conferences, do your events, do your sales kickoff meetings. One of the most common things I'm seeing just now is what we call the virtual speaker series, because everyone's stuck at home just now. So many companies are organizing a weekly or a monthly guest speaker to come in to inspire, to educate, and entertain their people or their clients. For example, I was working with a bank the other day. They have a weekly speaker series, guest speaker series, and they have something like 7,000 to 8,000 of their customers and their clients attending every single week. It builds really good relationships between the bank and the customers. The other day I was doing one of these for Tata, which is a steel company, and every week they bring in a guest speaker. So if you're working in a corporate setting, maybe what you can start to think about is doing a speaker series where you bring in a different speaker or trainer every single week to present to your team. If you're an event professional and you're looking to sell something to your clients, to your corporate clients or associations, you can curate your own speaker series for them. For example, you could create a COVID-19 series all about how to be agile, how to be innovative in these times, how to look after your well-being in these times as well. The second type of format I often see clients where they bring in speakers is what we call the virtual masterclass series. So these are more where you're doing kind of workshop style, much more interactive. So if I'm using Zoom, if I'm doing a workshop, I'll use things like what we call the breakout rooms. So what I could do, we have about 1,000 people on this presentation, on this webinar just now. I could break you up into rooms of 5. So you'd all suddenly go into your individual rooms of 5. I'll give you a task to work on, and you get to meet people that way, you get to network that way, and I can bring you back into the room. Also, in the same way, sometimes if you're doing a whole one-day conference, you know, that time, like maybe 9 a.m. or 2 p.m. after people have lunch, they're a little bit groggy, they're a little bit tired. Well, what you can do today is you can bring in people who specialize in doing energizer sessions. So at 2 o'clock, they're going to come in, they're going to get everyone in their homes doing things, bringing the energy back up into your conference as well. So once again, if you have experience in doing live in-person events, you know at 2 o'clock, people get a little bit drowsy. At 5 o'clock, people are thinking about going home and their minds are drifting. What can you do virtually to help them in that process? And something I've started doing a lot of is, just to make it very easy for the client, is putting together what we call these days in a box. So I'll do one which is called a virtual innovation day in a box. So that's where I'll work with a client and they say, James, we have these 3 hours of a conference, or, you know, in this particular month, we want to do a 3-hour session. We want to inspire, educate, and entertain our people on creativity and innovation. And so what we'll do is, myself and the Bureau, we will essentially put together the whole event. We'll do the whole thing. We'll host it for you. And I would come in, do the opening keynote and do a workshop with everyone. We'll have a professional moderator or MC. We'd have live translation. And then we'd have another guest speaker as well. So just reach out to the team at Smart Speakers and they can start to talk to you about curating these little innovation days or days in a box. You could have a leadership day in a box. You could have a resilience day in a box. You could have a sales day in a box. This is just different ways of thinking about it. Let's talk about conferences now. So I'm going to talk about 2 types of conferences that we see that are being done virtually. The first is the internal conference. This is where you're just presenting internally to your employees, for example, or your top executives. This is what I do a lot of, and where I'm brought in by the client. It's an internal conference as well. Now, myself, my team, and team here at Smart Speakers, we could almost kind of run the whole thing for you. So we could do the whole thing as a live online conference. We could do it pre-recorded with parts of it live Q&A. In fact, we could even do what we call the evergreen stages as well. So this is something, if you're already starting to think about your conference just now, reach out to the team, obviously, at Smart Speakers, and we can kind of talk about some of the tools that are available to take that and either do it as a fully live or hybrid, you know, part live, part pre-recorded, or evergreen. Now, I know many of you do more client-facing conferences or sales conferences where the goal is to bring prospects and bring prospective clients and clients together in order to be able to make sales in the end of that event and to build relationships between the company and the client and their audience. So let me show you some examples of what we did. I already mentioned the one we did, which was kind of like this, which is called Event Professionals Summit. So the goal of this was to really bring in as many people within the events professionals world who would register for this event, and it generates leads, and also it generates sales. So let me show you kind of how this works a little bit from the inside. So if you look at many of these, what we call virtual summits, you'll often see the format of them is, it might be free on the front end initially. So you might go to Event Professionals Summit, and it will offer a free pass to attend this particular event. Now, here's the thing. The event will be free, so you can watch all of the sessions free, but only live. If you want any of the pre-recorded sessions, or you want to have lifetime access to watch any of them, you're going to have to pay, you're going to have to upgrade to what we call a VIP. Now, the interesting thing about this model of going from a free pass to what we call VIP pass and then upselling to your main product or your service is these can really scale very, very quickly. There's summits like these, and they'll do about 1 million people a year attending these online summits. Because on the front end, 90% of the audience will come in, will not buy a VIP pass initially. But what that allows you to do is allows you to bring in this huge number of leads for yourself or your client. Imagine that, every single day you could be bringing in thousands, tens of thousands of new leads for your client that your sales teams can then follow up on. But then we also have the VIP pass. So this is where people can get lifetime access to all the sessions from this particular online summit or conference. Now, the interesting thing here is what we've found is for every dollar we spend on ads, things like Facebook ads, Google ads, we'll make $3 back straight away in the first 15 minutes of people immediately upgrading to VIP, which means that every point after this, we're making profit. It's almost like we're building our lists of our prospective clients and our prospects for free. And then after that, those lists can be given to your sales teams, your telephone sales teams, or you could follow up with email campaigns or email sequences. So these are highly effective to do if you're doing sales oriented or client facing events. And I'm seeing lots of different industries do this in the world of banking, the world of finance, with the world of HR. I won't go too much in terms of the back end. This is one of my clients, Red Hat, now part of IBM. Like many of these companies are all now moving to doing these virtual events, and they're so much easier today than they used to be. And actually, this is what I believe. When we go back to the time when things are unlocked again and people can travel, we're not going to go back to the way it was. I believe we're going to go to what we call more kind of hybrid conferences and hybrid events. That will be where some of the audience and some of the speakers will be attending in person, live there, and some of them will be attending virtually. And depending on the type of event and when it is and what the industry is for, it's going to be different between the in-person and the virtual. Now, here's an interesting thing to think about, and this is the stuff that I'm starting to do now with some clients, is holograms. I don't know if you remember, I was a Star Wars fan as a kid. I was born in 1977, which is the year that Star Wars came out. And if you ever remember Star Wars, there was the Princess Leia, when they pressed the button and this little hologram of Princess Leia came up and they were able to have a conversation with us. This was fantasy or fiction, but today this is reality. A lot of conferences now are able to set up that I can film from here in my studio in the UK, and then the hologram of me will be transmitted and projected onto the stage live. So if you're doing an event which is over 500 people, so it's a larger event, you have big screens, it looks like I'm there on stage. If you want to see other speakers are doing this just now, there's myself, Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra, Yuval Noah Harari, who is a great kind of speaker, writer. He did his TED Talk as a hologram recently. And then there's also people like Peter Diamandis, who's a futurist. And many of us speakers that speak a lot, we're now kind of getting our own holodecks where we can actually just film everything from home. Now, at the moment, it's a little bit expensive, the technology, But I believe that when we start going back to doing live in-person events, some of the speakers that you may be bringing in for your events, maybe you could actually get them the hologram version of them, and they don't actually even have to travel to your event, and you can get them at a slightly lower cost perhaps. And then finally, we have the online training. I won't cover this too much just now, but what I'm doing a lot just now is with my corporate clients is they're asking me to film lots of online training. Obviously, I speak about creativity, innovation, and AI, but something, if you're a company, you can be doing audience-facing ones. I was doing something for ADNOC, which is the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, where they asked me to film a series of short 1-minute videos for social media, for Instagram. Or I was creating courses which go into the learning management systems of some of these companies as well. So this is where we're starting to see this blend where many of our children now are learning from home on their iPads or on their devices. And this is really very much within the world of business at the same time. So let's talk about next steps, where we go from here. I mentioned, or I think Francisco mentioned earlier, we're doing some what we call strategy sessions. And this is, if you're in this situation just now, like, yes, we want to do these virtual events. We have to do these. We've got this event coming up in September or in June or whenever the event is, and we need to make this happen. We need someone to guide us through this process. So if you reach out to Francisco and the team at Smart Speakers, I'm going to have a link here, then we're doing what we call these strategy sessions with me. So this is where you're going to get direct access to me and the team from Smart Speakers, where we'll essentially strategize about your event and tell you the best kind of roadmap to taking your event online. So that's the first option. And we're going to do these are really one-on-one Zoom calls, kind of almost like what we're doing just now. And it could be you, maybe some of your events team, your CEO, for example, and myself and a team from Smart Speakers. But perhaps you prefer, actually, you can feel quite comfortable just to do this on your own, to do your virtual event, and just run it with yourself and your own team. In which case, we actually have some training available for you. This is a training on how to do virtual events, specifically on how to do some of these online summits, these client-facing, sales-orientated types of online events. And we have a whole training courses just for this, how to do them live, how to do these kind of evergreen version ones as well. And so if you reach out to Francisco and his team at Smart Speakers, they can also tell you about this. It's called our virtual events training, which is all online. So it's kind of self-paced. It's something that you can just do on your own. Finally, if you're wanting to bring in a speaker, a virtual speaker for your next event, and you really want to work with a speaker who does a lot of these virtual events, I would love the opportunity to have a discussion about coming in to speak at your event. Either we could do it virtually, like we're doing just now, or if your event doesn't happen until next year, we could even maybe look at me coming and speaking wherever your conference is happening. So once again, just reach out to the team at Smart Speakers and they can tell you all about that. And the final one is if you want a more interactive. I was in Ecuador the other day working with clients like Puerto Banco and Yanbal, which is a cosmetics company, and Corporación Favorita, where I do much more kind of workshop style, and we can do these virtually or we can do them in person. So whole kind of suite of options there available to you. So in terms of next steps, take down this email. I think you might have already received emails from this address, info@smartspeakersweb.com. They have two numbers as well. They have the number of Mexico, which is 5255-5047-4000, or if you're in Colombia, 571-646-6830. And I mentioned I had a little gift for you, a little surprise present. And we're going to come to Q&As, so please start leaving your questions there. If you would like it, I mentioned Event Professionals Summit, this huge online conference we have. Now, the VIP pass for that normally costs $200. But anyone that would like this, we're going to give you a complimentary VIP pass to that summit. All you have to do to access it, to get your VIP pass for this summit, is just email my team at support@jamestaylor.me, support@jamestaylor.me, and they will send you your complimentary pass to Event Professionals Summit. And you can really start to see how these online summits work. So thank you so much for that. And I think we're going to get into some Q&As just now, and Francisco can also answer some of your other questions that you may have about the strategy sessions. Now, do we have you here, Francisco? Can we hear you?
Yes, Rafa.
Or is it Rafa?
Yes.
Rafa, I'm going to start with the first question.
Thank you,
Thank
Rafa.
you. Thank you, James, for this great presentation. It's amazing to learn all about the things that we can do now with our events. And, you know, I think our community here in Mexico and Latin America for this special presentation is really more with the meeting planners, PCOs, and everybody behind the event. So this is a great question that we have right now from Cricia Espinosa. She's asking, like, organizing virtual events can lower incomes for the meeting planners. You know,
yes.
many of the meeting planners, the business composition might be on other ways of making incomes when they make live events, and understanding all the great advantages of the digital world. But I think she's trying to see how incomes can be substituted on the digital world, or how that this can have that objective on the way of making incomes on the live events from the virtual events.
Yeah, so this is a difficult one, and obviously the whole events industry is going through this. I work with a lot of travel companies, and obviously they're all really suffering. Airlines, we're all kind of suffering just now. Obviously, if you are an events professional, an events company, you're being brought in by a client, and your commission would normally be then across the hotels, maybe the flights, the hospitality, speakers. It all comes in together. And so I think that we're going to have this big challenge. We're not going to see things, I don't believe, come back in the same way for the next 12 months. It's not going to happen. So we have to think, we have a couple of options here. And I say this now as a speaker. I'm not an event organizer, although we do organize some events. So this is the way that we're doing it. And I have an event coming up that our company is actually organizing. And it was going to be the end of August into the first week in September. We actually had to move this event to December because it was the one that was going to be the safest we felt for our attendees and the participants. But what we're doing now is we're offering a virtual pass in addition to the live pass for this one. And what we've actually found is we've actually made twice the amount of money selling the virtual pass as we have selling the live pass as well. Now that's fine if you're doing an event which is where people are buying tickets, for example, if you're doing that. If your clients are really more around the corporate side, then obviously if those flights aren't coming back yet, if those hotels aren't getting to capacity, you're not able to make those percentages. So you have a couple of options here. One is you can just look to increase the number of events that you have to do per year in order to try and get that back up. So let's say if you're an events company, you may be doing 3 events, 4 events, big events per year. Because online events can be done at a much quicker pace, you may have to make the decision, okay, we're going to have to do 1 every month. And that's how you're going to make up. So you're going to make it up with volume as much as anything else. The other way that you could do it is you could think, well, hold on a second. Let's think about our clients at the center of what we do, be customer centric. So yes, they do their live in-person events, but because they can't do that, they're probably needing just now other things. They're probably needing a speaker series, a webinar series. They're probably needing workshops, virtual workshops. They're probably needing online training, online education. So you can, if you think about the client and the center of that, what else could you potentially sell and create for them and make their life easy until we start to see the live events coming back? Because they will come back eventually. But it's like, what do we need to do to be able to survive in this time? And you can either do it from doing more events, virtual events, to try and get the volume up, or you could do it from how can we sell more things to the same clients we currently work with, but maybe different things.
Perfect.
Thank you, James. Oh, sorry, Rafa, are you going to say something?
No, I think you have another question.
Yes. Diego del Valle is asking, what are the best platforms for webinars with switching effects and track rooms?
So good question, Diego. So the ones that I'm using most of the time, or my clients, my corporate clients are using, Zoom is obviously number one for just general types of events, conferences, meetings. People feel very comfortable. They had obviously some quite serious security issues a few weeks ago, which they've patched and have managed to solve, and most of those problems. So Zoom is the one I'm finding most of the time. I mentioned you can do breakout groups and things like that, and there's lots more features. I mean, if you think about it, where we are today in 2020, can you imagine what this is going to look like in even 12 months' time? With all the investment that's going into this area just now, it's going to be a completely different place. So it's good that you're in there at the start. Other ones I'm using a lot just now is things like WebEx. I'm not a particular fan of it myself personally. I much prefer using Zoom as that platform. If you're doing events where you're looking to sell during the event, or you have some kind of call to action, for example, then a really good platform to look into is Webinar Jam. Webinar Jam. Webinar Jam allows you to do live events, and not just kind of webinars, but it also allows you to do what we call evergreen events, evergreen webinars. Now, where would you use this, for example? Let's say if you have a client who's a bank, and they could do a whole series of evergreen, always available webinars on different parts of banking, you know, how to get the best rates, best mortgages, all different things. And within those, you can have very strong calls to action. You can have things, countdown timers, you can have lots of things in there. So if you're doing stuff which is sales orientated, or there's an offer being made within the presentation, look at Webinar Jam. That's much better suited than something like Zoom. And the other one I would finally talk about would be something like Microsoft Teams, which I'm using a little bit. Some of my clients use. It's not quite as fully formed, I would say, as Zoom.
Okay, perfect. We have another question from the side of the convention centers and all the venues. They are asking Lorena Safa from Torreon Convention Center, how do you recommend, or the best suggestions for all the convention centers to be prepared technologically for offering to their clients the hybrid events? So we understand that there are going to be a lot of this venue that will also try to take advantage, and many of the clients might be using this kind of room. So what would you suggest to be prepared on technological matter for these convention centers?
Yeah, so obviously if it's smaller convention centers, smaller meeting spaces, then I would suggest that they kind of set up their own systems. So it's almost plug and play from the client's perspective. Everything is there. It's just a case of plugging in stuff. The cameras are already set, you know, the right type of lighting is there, the right type of connections are there, all that stuff is available. If it is a larger convention center where you're bringing in different types of events all the time, then frankly, you're bringing in different AV companies, and they should have their own setups, and they're going to have different requirements. Obviously, a trade show setup is completely different from a conference. So with the exception, I would say, of just having like super fast internet, because it's going to be streamed and things a lot more. For the larger conferences, it's really the AVs, and trying to maybe work with the AV teams. So I would, this is maybe a nice thing that you could do if you're convention centered just now. You know the AV teams that come in to your events most of the time for doing events. What about if you just put together a little Zoom event like we're doing just now? Have a discussion, have that conversation with them. Do it obviously virtually. No one has to leave home. No one has to put their lives in danger to do this. It'll be interesting to see what things kind of really come out of that, because I would, for large convention centers, I would worry that they invested too much in the technology if that's not their core thing as a space. It might be better to partner with the right partners for those that you can just very easily work with the clients, the people that are kind of renting, coming into your spaces and connecting them with the best people. But for smaller spaces, smaller meeting rooms, venues, theaters, conference centers, they should be setting up cameras, lights, all the cabling, so the whole event could be very easily hybrid.
James, we have another question. Patricia Vargas is doing. Live events are about networking.
Yeah.
How can you do a good networking in a virtual event?
It's very hard. You know, this is, as much as I love virtual events, there's nothing like getting together, having a cup of coffee with someone, just having that conversation. So in some ways, I think when things come back, I think after this, people get over the psychological thing of wanting to be able to get together. And that may not be just when the vaccine is ready, which is going to be in a year's time or 18 months. Once we start to see better treatments available and people are less scared about catching COVID, then you might start seeing people get together. But in the meantime, in this next period that we're looking at for the next, between now, 18 months, 2 years or so, we do need ways for people to do that. So this is what the clients I work with, what they're doing. If they're doing a conference, let's say I'm working with one client and they're doing a conference in September, they're organizing a little series of smaller events. And so instead of bringing all 1,000 people, which they're going to bring for the event in September, they will do a series of events just for 50 people. And they're facilitated. And these are online kind of webinars, one every couple of weeks, just to help bring people together so they can have a conversation. So when the big event does happen, big event, then they can do that. Now, I mentioned breakout rooms. I don't know how many of you used breakout rooms. I love it. I was attending a 60th birthday party the other day on Zoom for a friend of mine. And we hit breakout rooms and we could all go out into our individual rooms. I think that's a really nice way of doing that. And if you have a good speaker or a good facilitator for your event, then he or she will be able to ensure that those breakout rooms work very effectively. Another nice thing I think you could do is if you're bringing in a speaker, like myself, for example, in addition to the main presentation, what you can also do is send the speaker, essentially, maybe give yourself some time and the speaker some time afterwards for him or her to go into some smaller rooms. So for example, if you really want your top 50 clients to have time together, a bit more time together, then in addition to the main presentation for the 1,000 people, you could do a separate little webinar online event where the speaker comes in for those 50 people. And it's almost that, it's really more discursive in that sense. And a good speaker, a good workshop leader or facilitator should be able to do all that, or a good kind of MC or host should be able to do that. There are other tools. There's obviously apps and things you can use. I don't use many of them. I'm a big fan of just doing things in advance of the event, getting to know some individual people in advance, and then also immediately straight after the event. Something else that you can do is if your event is there and it's about trying to drive traffic to individual booths or what used to be booths, there is virtual expo or virtual trade show kind of software that you can do that can help facilitate that and organize those kind of meetings as well. So the long and the short of it though is it's not perfect. It really isn't. And that's why I think even when all of this is done, we will value live in-person events even more, because this is where it allows you and I to meet and have a conversation, go a little bit deeper.
Perfect. I think we have one last question because I think the time is almost, but this is a great question. Hello, James. Thanks for the presentation. In our case, we organize regional board meetings around the country. This year, we plan to do it online for 300 counselors, important businessmen. So 2 questions. Which is the best secure platform to do it, and how to engage the counselors to watch live?
Okay. So the first question is best platform, and I'm just going to go back to Zoom. I think that the security software additions that they've made recently are much better. So I'll give you a simple example. Some of my clients work in the defense industry, and they're very aware in terms of security if they're doing these private Zoom meetings that no one else can get in. And many of them are using Zoom. The recent, I think it was the G7 meetings where our cabinet here in the United Kingdom, they all use Zoom. So if it's good enough for government meetings, then it's good enough, I think, for business people to use. Then the second one was about how to ensure that they turn up live. If you're doing like a regular webinar, I think the average turn up rate is around 75% or so. I don't know how many do we have on just now? I'm just, let me see if I can see here. We've got 600 people. I think we had about 850 registered before I came on. So it's about, we're kind of sitting about that. So you should kind of be looking for that kind of 75% to turn up live. Things that you could do to get people to turn up live is make sure that, like, there's going to be little surprises or little Easter eggs, little things that they can only get if they turn up there in person. You can bring in guest speakers. There's a friend of mine that I work with. He specializes in what we call boardroom advisory, of just being kind of going in, being a hired hand to go into these boardroom advisories. His knowledge is extremely valuable. He's an economist, but it's very now. Like, this is like what we need to know now. Very, very relevant for this particular point. So even if I watch that webinar or that video a week later, it's going to be out of date. So think about how you can add something which is very relevant for this particular week. Think about how you could put little surprises to almost start to train the attendees to turn up live. The other big thing that's always going to make a difference is the time of day that you run the event. I do lots of webinars and events. Tuesday, in my case, most of the time it's Tuesdays or Thursdays between 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. your local time. That's the time, and you probably, if you go and find studies, that's the time I generally find that they work, with exception if you're doing a cocktail type get together, 5 o'clock on a Friday, that's absolutely fine.
James, what actually we're doing right now is we're doing an 11 o'clock webinar, and we're doing a repetition at 6 o'clock. Yeah. So in that case, you get both people that are not able to do it either in the morning or in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Well, James, thanks a lot for this great presentation. We all love it. This is, voy a hablar en español. Esto es una nueva forma en la que nos estamos encontrando para hacer las cosas, y pues fue de un gran valor. Como lo comentó James, para la gente que quiera profundizar más, va a haber unos webinars y también va a haber sesiones de estrategia en particular con cada uno según sus necesidades. Y pues no me queda más que agradecerles. Los que quieran participar el próximo jueves, vamos a tener a Odín Dupeirón a las 11 de la mañana. Y pues muchas gracias al Comir, aquí a Rafa, a Jaime Salazar y a todos ustedes, y pues los dejo con Rafa.
Gracias, Pancho. Gracias a Smart Speakers. Thank you very much, James Taylor, for this great presentation, the great content and these great ideas, so we can see how our meetings industry will come back, and this as everybody's telling, this new normal for our events. Gracias a todos por conectarse con estos webinars, por este tipo de contenido que el Consejo Mexicano de la Industria de Reuniones quiere seguir compartiendo con ustedes. Como saben, el COMIR, aparte de reunir a todas las asociaciones del turismo y reuniones, también se preocupan en estar generando contenido y poder llevar valor a ustedes en estos tiempos en los que estamos rearmando, reorganizando y replanteando toda la industria de eventos. Regresaremos más fuertes. Gracias a Smart Speakers, gracias Pancho por siempre traernos grandes contenidos y sobre todo contenido de valor que todos vamos a poder implementar en nuestros negocios, y estaremos con ustedes compartiendo todo en la página de Facebook de Comir, en la página web de Comir, estaremos haciendo updates de todo lo que hacemos. Y recuerden, como dice Pancho, a las 6 de la tarde habrá una repetición de este fabuloso webinar. Habrá más contenido también de la presentación de James en la página de Smart Speakers. Y no dejen de estar conectados. Este es el momento en el que tenemos tiempo para rearmar todo, para seguir manteniendo toda la estrategia que vamos a implementar ahora que podamos regresar a los eventos. Gracias desde el COMIR, a nombre de Jaime Salazar, nuestro presidente, y de todos los que componemos COMIR. Gracias por sintonizarnos. Hasta la próxima.
Gracias.
Hasta luego.